Start? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Dwaipayan. How do I pronounce it? Dwai? Dwaipayan. Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Kasturi and Dwaipayan, for this very, I think, a very timely film. And I think it echoes much with what's happening in all our hearts and in the country today. In fact, just as we were driving down here in an auto with Shakun and Kalpana, we were coming in an auto driver, and we had this heated argument over the past 15 minutes. He's a young Bihari migrant, okay, and he was full of why BJP, is the right kind of thing. And he said, of course, I understand, in Karnataka, we're full of caste and, religion politics in Bihar, but it's not in Karnataka. So we said, then you see then the contradiction in what you're saying. But he's so convinced, and all the arguments are packed. So it is extremely, disturbing. And I think you have captured, obviously, and that too in the context of Bengal, which I think is one little hope in the country, along with the Kerala. It holds out some hope, in terms of an alternative, at least a resistance, forget alternative, that at least there is some resistance still alive and kicking there. Of course, I have a number of, questions to start off, but I wonder if we want to open out to the... After? Okay. Well, I will not give any, I just have a few, areas of inquiry which, if you and, Kasturi could, respond to. One, of course, is regarding the form itself, and I think I found it very moving, in a way that both of you started with your own personal narratives, of your families, you with your father and Kasturi with her father. And into that you've woven in other, whether it's archival footage or what's happening around you, all of that. So it's all different kinds of materials that you try to, bring together. So I was just wondering how you kind of, one, how you even got some of that footage that you got, especially the most sensitive ones, how you managed to, access, get into all those spaces that you did, and, how did you manage to access all that material that you did. And I was a little disappointed, of course, that you did not go too a little deeper into your own personal, personal histories, because I think, I would have liked to know more, for example, why your father, who was in the RSS, why did he give up? I mean, of course, Gandhi's, obviously, that was a turning point for him. So what was that changed in him? And what is it that he's seeing now? I think, because we're looking at master narratives can be very, they can paralyze us. Master narratives can always paralyze us, and you look at what is happening in the country today, you think there's no hope. But I do see some little bits. It's not to kind of become hopeful, not to have this kind of toxic, hopefulness. I'm not at all talking about that. But we need to find ways to resist, right? So for me, the very fact, there are many, signs of hope there. One, your father at a personal level, giving up being part of the RSS. And then in Bengal itself, while, it bucked the national trend, in the national elections, BJP came to power. But in the state elections, despite the fact that the master narrative was very much in play, within the state, and yet, Bengal kind of, bucked the trend again. Of course, as you say, the left and the Congress were decimated. But obviously, there was still a resistance. So I'd like to understand why, for example, that Rahul Sinha, who seems to be so much of a strong man, why did he lose? It would have been important for, for us to understand why he lost. So in the midst of all these master narratives, I think it's also important to look at these micro narratives of resistance, so that helps us to find some way forward. So these are some of my, broad questions. So if you can both...
There are many questions. So I'd start with the access that we had to film many of the scenes of the film that seems quite challenging, so to say. So one of the reasons we got some of the footage was because it was election time and because so many medias were covering the election process. So they lowered their guard a little. So one of the things that we did is that using one contact to go to the second contact. For example, we contacted Rahul Sinha's secretary first. After we gained his confidence, we made him call the VHP guys. So they thought that we are part of the whole thing. Then we called up one guy to call up the IT cell guy. So it was happening like that. We had 70 hours of footage. So we had talked to a huge number of BJP and RSS person. So by talking to them and making contact with them, we kind of got the contacts that were kind of really important. And also I was clandestinely part of at least 100 WhatsApp groups that they had. So through those WhatsApp groups, we got some of the video footages that we have used in the film. So also we got the access to film Bajrang Dal camp that they have, but somehow that didn't materialize because maybe our lead was blown and all. But we kind of, then it got a bit scary, so we kind of dropped it. About the editing process and having more of our personal stories in the film, we did try to incorporate some other personal stories that we have, but somehow the structure of the film didn't allow us to do that because in edit stage you have gone through at least 4 stages of edit, and while doing so we thought that some of the footage we have to discard because it was not going well with the whole of the film, the structure of the film. And about the little why the Rahul Sinha lost, one of the reasons being that the statue making incident of Vidyasagar was very important for Bengali society, and all the seats that they have gone to election after that phase, they have lost on all those seats. There was 9 seats after statue making incident, and all the seats kind of BJP lost out. Whether I'm not too hopeful about situation in Bengal because although they lost, the percentage is 38% now, the election, the number of percentage. And if you think that we have 30% of Muslim votes, and assuming that the Muslim population haven't voted for BJP, that leaves out 70% of Hindu votes. But if they have got 38% votes, that means that at least 50% of the Hindus have voted for BJP. Also, we need to keep in mind that the social security measures that Mamata have initiated have created a huge women voter base for Mamata. So assuming that most of the women Hindu voters have voted for Mamata, that says that male Hindu votes have overwhelmingly gone to the BJP in this election. And apart from the rise of BJP, one has to realize that BJP is not a single entity. They're part of a pantheon, they're part of a Sangh Paribar. So although the BJP has lost out, the fact that the RSS and the VHPs were working very strongly in Bengal, that is a warning signal for the social fabric of our state, the secular progressive values that we hold very dear to in our state is corroding, and it is not a very, and also the fact that Trinamool has its own problem. Trinamool is widely seen as a very corrupt party. Trinamool is widely seen as a party with, which uses very strong arm tactics during the election. So the kind of discontent that people have against TMC can easily be used by the BJP in the next election because we don't have a credible alternative to BJP TMC that they have. Because left and Congress is reduced to 0, so if we can't kind of remove BJP from the principal opposition space, there is always a chance that BJP might come back in 2026, that the next election that we have. Yeah.
Kasturi, you want to respond?
I thank you, Madhu. I'm sorry for joining from here. I really wanted to respond to the part of your question regarding our fathers. So, for me, I think his father and my father, they were actually standing at 2 important junctures in Bengal's history. Whereas his father saw the partition and somehow the partition, the independence, and then after that, Gandhi's assassination sort of turned him around. But there was a chance that he could have gone the other way, right? And lots of people may have, retained their their warmth towards the RSS, those who saw partition. And as we come like 75 years down the lane, we see that those partition wounds are being dug up again. So, for example, this time around, if you see the social engineering that happened in Bengal, a lot of it was for the Motua voters. BJP tried to form a vote block from Motua voters, and Motua voters, if you may know, they are actually Namoshudro, which is the Bengali version of the Dalits, who who were latecomers in partition, and they were late settlers. So they have a lot of grievances, and there is a lot of border conflict over land with the local Muslim population, which the BJP is now trying to sort of break up. And they also sort of in their own devious way, they want to celebrate 15th and 16th August as partition day, but with a focus to Hindus being the only victims and no other victims. So Hindus are the only victims of Bengal partition. That way they want to remember. So I think his father's story also sort of captures that period of time that he could have gone either way, but he chose a particular way. And as for my father, I think it was more to do with the particular to the Bangladesh Liberation War, which is 1971. So he came in 1964, which was after the language movement happened in Bangladesh against the imposition of Urdu over Bengali. So he also he was a witness of riots in 1964. He saw his friends being victims of that, although they had a past where they had a very happy relationship with their neighbors. But he did see all those, but even then he managed to retain his memories of the good times, not choose harp on those memories, and that was another turn either ways. They could have retained this memory or that memory. So I think this is also a game of memories that is being played. If you talk about the grand narrative and the micro narrative being individual people's memories, and the grand narrative is trying to end that, saying to people as if that you are not allowed to remember those memories, just you keep on remembering this one particular memory we're telling you. And every community has had its fault lines. So if this game of memories they win, then there will be, it's emotionally connected to people. So it's very easy to sway them that way. So I think that for me is very interesting for the father stories that we have here. Of course, towards the later end, we had a lot of fights over the edits, whether to include more of fathers. But we have to remember that when we were ending, it was the time of COVID, and it was very unsafe to sort of shoot them. So we had to maintain a lot of, especially Dwaipayan's father was not very well. So we had to give up on, sort of trying to follow them back towards the end of the narrative, and we decided to structure it the other way.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Kasturi. Anybody else in the audience? I think no.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Fala. And my question to you is that, we know the problems with the Congress, but why do you think the left has been so decimated in Bengal? It had been a stronghold for decades, and why have they completely disappeared from the spectrum?
As you all know, that left had done some real blunders during this Shingur and Nandigram phase, and they quite never recover from that, whatever they have done. And there has never been a serious introspection on their part at what has gone wrong for them. And left was seen as a party which is for the peasants and the workers. When they have taken a very sharp neoliberal turn, their voter base kind of deserted them. And also the fact that with the rise of BJP, Muslims used to vote for left, but they have shifted to TMC for the single reason that TMC being the principal opposition to BJP, for them TMC offers the only hope. That also means that the Muslim population has been held hostage in the altar of secularism, as if they have to be the secular. The Hindus can be anything, but the Muslim has always to vote for the secular parties. That is creating its own problem. Trinamool can do anything with the Muslim population and still get the votes. So that is a problem. And I think we share the problem throughout India, where Muslims are being held hostage, and they have to prove they are the secular ones and not the other way around. So yes, that's the, and there is no clear answer. I think they also don't have an answer to why they are not succeeding at all, because they are zero now. The kind of movements that they're doing are primarily against the corruption of the BJP. But, for example, Mamata is doing have initiated a host of social security measures. In spite of, instead of saying that you should kind of broaden those scope, they're saying that these are dole politics, which is a typically neoliberal way of saying things. They should have fought more on those issues, but they have kind of shied away from that. I think they are in a serious, they need a serious kind of self-introspection to kind of revive themselves. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks. Can you say if the BJP has consolidated, remained dormant, or weakened in the year since the polls? Thanks.
BJP particularly haven't been very strong after the election, primarily because many of the people they have poached from TMC have gone back to TMC, and they face a lack of leadership, so to say. They don't have a face which it can emerge as a principal opposition to TMC, because Mamata being Mamata, with whatever follies that she has, Mamata has a huge mass connect. To fight TMC, BJP also needs somebody who is very acceptable to the population that they lack. But the fact that BJP is only one part of the story. RSS and VHP doesn't seem to be weakening at all. They are strong. And the influence of Hinduization of politics is gaining ground in Bengal. For example, Ram Navami rallies, which have been instrumental in stoking riots. For example, Mamata has taken his own kind of Ram Navami rallies, saying that if they can have Ram Navami rallies, we can also have that. That's Hinduization of politics, and that in the long run only helps the Sangh Paribar, so to say. So that's that. It's not so easy. It's a very complex situation. It can go either way. And we hope that as in the opposition space, left and Congress comes up, but that's a hope that we have, but that doesn't mean that will translate into reality. Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. So I think I have a comment and a question. One, I really like the music and how you kind of structure the whole narrative. And I really found the personal take on the whole election thing refreshing, even though I still miss having the opportunity to hear from the local people, right, who have participated in the rallies. So there were so many opportunities for you to talk to them, but I think there was a choice that was made to talk to the leaders as opposed to the layman, so to say. If you could explain that. And the second,
talk to a host of people. Yeah. Kasturi can take this, yeah.
And if I could, before I pass on the mic, if I could also
Sorry,
comment.
I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, yeah. So my question was, it was really refreshing. I really like the documentary. Thank you so much.
From the audience, I think the mic is...
I think that's my... Yeah.
Kasturi?
Is it possible that you repeat the question, because I didn't get it?
Yeah, can you hear?
No, I think it's me. I think one of the first time using a mic. So this tonight, this evening has been educative in two ways. One about Bengal elections, and second about using a mic. I repeat my question. I think I'll be brief. The choice.
Can you hear him, Kasturi?
No, I can only hear you and Dwaipayan.
Okay, fine. Maybe I'll just rephrase your question for her.
Yeah.
If I leave out anything, do add. Yeah, I think the question he's trying to ask is, I mean, he made a few comments. He said he liked the film and particularly some of the personal take, your own, yours and Dwaipayan's personal take. He liked all that. But his question, I think, is that was there a conscious choice? So why, he noticed that there was a choice that you have made in not listening to people on the road. You've only spoken to the leaders, but you could have spoken to people who were participating in the rallies. So he missed the voice of the ordinary people, is what I understand you asked. So was there a conscious decision you made related to that, and if so, why?
Actually, apart from Rahul Sinha and the BHP leader, none of them are really big leaders. For example, the IT cell person that we spoke to, he's not the in charge or anything. He is just like working as a. Similarly, the person who used to dress up as Hanuman, he and his family, they can be called foot soldiers of the BJP. And even, the voters who share that, their views, or the student who shares her view during the statue breaking, or the vendor outside Nakroda Masjid. I think those are the voices that come. So yeah, we had a lot more footage of many people. But then when you edit a film, and the narrative builds, then you do have to make certain choices of keeping certain things and not being able to use the rest of the material. So as Dwaipayan mentioned, that the total material was like huge. So yeah, so we decided to keep, of course, some of those voices, but I don't really think that it's netas so much. But yeah, except for profiling one particular neta because we wanted to show his style of electioneering, and that's the reason.
There was somebody.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much. This was a really very interesting take on the history of last few years. And your personal history made it much richer. I wanted to ask about the cultural appropriation. What you mentioned is that the vote share of Hindus, you are estimating that out of, say, 70% Hindus, if 38% have gone towards the BJP, then that means 50% of men are voting, as you kind of estimated. So does this mean that they've swallowed this whole narrative of Ramnavami processions, etc.? What about the cultural resistance? What about the positing of Durga Puja and the whole rich cultural traditions of Bengal versus this whole, Hindiization? There's only in one place in the film it comes up as to why are all your slogans in Hindi? Why are you not speaking in Bengali? But what about that? What about the entire Bengali cultural weight being, pitted against them?
Situation is much more complex than just having Ramnavami rallies in Bengal. So we have some of the segments of the population that they have targeted. For example, Namashudras, who Nibha Sarkar happens to be Namashudras. We have Rajbangshis, we have Adivashis. So Rajbangshi population is a very old population, a Dalit population of Bengal, and they have their conflict with the local Muslim population. So their deities have been used, their icons have been used by BJP to pose against the Muslim population in Bengal. For example, Namashudras, who have history of being persecuted in Bangladesh. Their kind of icons have been used also. It's not only the Hindi icons that have been used. We have just passingly mentioned the rise of Bengali nationalism in Bengal in recent years. So not only the Kali and Durga, the religion of Bengal is much more complex than having just meat-eating and liquor-eating Kali, because even the Muslim and the Hindu worship have a lot in common in Bengal, at least historically. We had many deities who were worshipped by both Hindu and Muslim population. Mazars were frequented by Hindus. So also we had, with all its limitations, Bengali Renaissance, and that have a huge impact even on people who are not literate, so to say. So there was the impact of Rabindranath and impact of all those people who have been progressive, who have been icons of progressive values in Bengal. So it's not that people haven't used them. For example, in our campaign, we have used the history of Bengal very much in our campaigns. And also the fact that Bengali nationalism grew because there was a response to the Hindiization of the state. And one of the vanguards of the BJP and Sangh Paribar in the initial days were obviously the Hindi-speaking migrants who are coming from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. There are a number of reasons to that. One of the reasons being Hindi language is akin to them, so they can kind of respond more to somebody speaking Hindi. And 83% of the Bengali population doesn't understand anything apart from Bengali. So for them, Modi's Bhushan means nothing basically because they can't understand what they are saying. So Bengali language, that's a slogan of Joy Bangla. So they were kind of new things in Bengali politics. So it's not that cultural resistance did not happen, but our film has its limitations and we couldn't show all the things. We have passingly referred to those things, but yes, yeah.
I really enjoyed the bit in the car and about that Goshala and counting the cows and all that because that was illuminating. But we also read a minister has been arrested because of cattle smuggling. What is cattle smuggling? Because I don't think we in Karnataka really understand what it is. And how you can make so many crores by doing that.
Cattle smuggling, Kasturi also can, yeah. Kasturi, somebody was asking that this Anubrata Mondal has been arrested because of cattle smuggling. So she wanted to understand why cattle smuggling is such a huge thing in Bengal and why, like, yeah, that's the question, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think, there have been other documentary films before, like, for example, Shourav Sharangi made a film called Chor. And, any film that deals with the Bengal and Bangladesh border will tell you that, cattle smuggling, though it's a coded term, it's part and parcel of border life. Not only in Bengal, if I may say, all over Northeast India. So it's, people do it for their livelihood, common people. Now this minister, I don't know what his role exactly is, but he is not like a typical smuggler. Even if he turns out to be one, he will be benefit of that comes. So this whole entire thing. But many people want to believe that the border is impermeable. Border actually is not something like that. Border is pretty much porous and amorphous. People do travel across it. They come for work, they go back again. From here also people go to Bangladesh, they come back again. It's a land which has been sort of very artificially divided. So people sort of do all these movements, and it's not just cattle, but other things that go from here to there. Not everything very legally always. So if you ask anybody who lives near any of these villages or near the border, maybe 10 kilometers or 50 kilometers, they'll not find it a huge issue because it's just, it's just very normal part of their routine. But I think it's a very loaded term when it comes to politicking, and so they sort of use that. Now this minister who's been arrested, I think even apart from this charges of cattle smuggling, he is benefiting a lot from illegal stone quarries in tribal lands. But that's not a very loaded term, so they will not bother him with that. So they want to use what suits their narrative. So cattle is the big word right now. But I think in Bengal borders, Bangladesh border, people don't really bother so much about who is taking cattle here from here to there. And the BSF, if you say so, has been reported. BSF is very into this whole thing, and they sort of are expected. They also, so they are witness to all of this, and they're beneficiaries, etc.
Here, after the assembly elections, there was some speculation that the left and the Congress deliberately, the voters voted for the TMC to avoid a split in the vote. and prevent the BJP from coming to power. So did you hear anything like that during?
It's on the contrary. On the contrary, if you watch the depletion of left vote and the gaining of BJP votes, there is clearly that left votes as like this, brother of the Nibas Sarkar, who happens to be, were BJP, CPM at that one time, became CPM. So CPM lower level leaders and cadres did became BJP one point, because one of the reason being the very anti-TMC attitude that they have. And before the election, both the elections, they were completely silent about BJP, the rise of BJP, both left and the Congress. So that kind of played a part that Muslim population kind of totally deserted them because they were scared. And if you are not talking about BJP, so they find you completely unacceptable, so to say. Yeah.
Hi, Dwaipayan.
Okay, sorry.
Kasturi and Dwaipayan, I liked your film. It's nice. Like the music and the footage that you have used. A quick question. You must be going around to other cities and gathering response and feedback. So what's the response from other private or public shows you might have done? And how do you plan to promote your film as well as that?
Thank you. I would like, because this film needs to be screened. It's not a typical arty film, so it needs to be screened as widely as possible. So we have screened in few places in Kerala. It has resonated in Kerala because the situation in Bengal and Kerala have a lot in common. But I would take this opportunity to appeal to everybody. If you can find any more spaces in Karnataka or anywhere else, it would be really lovely for us to screen those films in many other spaces. And we'd like to screen this film in as many spaces in India as possible, because I think without having conversation, without going to directly to the audience, there is no point in putting it in a OTT platform, which will never give us a chance to have a conversation with our audience. Yeah, thank you so much.
We'll take one last question.
Thanks. I'm Swati. Thanks, Kasturi Dwaipayan, for this amazing film. The question I had was about the no vote to BJP campaign. We heard much of the slogans, but I was wondering what was the narrative that was pushed in those campaigns? What was the response you got from different quarters? And is something like that still continuing? And is there some hope in doing something like that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, Kasturi, the question related to the no to BJP campaign.
I could hear the question. Yeah. So, this campaign, the civil society and the people's movements that got together for this campaign, they are not into electoral politics, much of them. And in 2019, all of us were, not getting involved in any sort of election-related stuff. So we just saw what happened, and what happened was quite scary in the sense that in terms of vote share, BJP's vote share went up from 6 to 7%, which they usually had. It had slowly grown to 10-12. From 10-12, it took a jump to 40%. So that was a 30% jump. And all these, grand narrative was being set, and so much money was being poured. So we took a decision around before the 2021 election. This time around, even though we are not part of the electoral process, we must launch an ideological campaign. So the campaign was an ideological offensive against the RSS mostly, and so we tried to the people we tried to address our campaign to was those 30% of the population who may have, for the first time in their life, may have shifted their vote to this new party in Bengal. And so we were not saying, things that we usually say to the already converted people. So we talked from the perspective of, let's say, a common Hindu person. What were his or her anxieties? What were the areas where, RSS would be very dangerous for their even very life and their livelihoods and their cultural identity, their identity as women, as worker, it was divided into like 12 or 14 of those areas, and it was the address target, or I wouldn't say target, but the people we were addressing were not assuming that they are converted like us. So we sort of made a lot of campaign videos. We did a lot of street corner meetings in district, posterings and involving young people. And it caught on like that, a lot of stencils, volumes, and all of that. Old style method, also in the social media a lot. Because we found that in the 2021 election, the TMC's opposition to the BJP was pretty much only electoral. It was also trying to be very Hindu and trying to do things which they not done with, just to play into the BJP's narrative. So they were not doing an ideological offensive by any standard. And the left and the Congress were so much taken by the TMC was in the assembly election, and they had to target the ruling party. So even they were not launching an ideological offensive against the RSS BJP. So we thought that it was our task to sort of fill in that void and ask people never to commit that same mistake again. But it seems that although it's come down a little, it's still 37, 38%. It didn't come back to what it used to be.
I'll add one thing that we had some long-term strategy and a short-term strategy. In the long-term strategy, we think that if we can't have a long-term social and cultural offensive to the BJP, so the platform is still there, obviously. So right now in Bengal, for example, in our locality, we run a school where we don't only teach the regular subjects, but we also try to inculcate the values of secularism, democracy, and workers' issues. So right now we have close to around 90 such schools run by progressive people throughout Bengal. So we are trying to form a network. So, and we are trying to expand so that apart from doing some jalous and all that, which is good in its own way, but we need to have some long-term strategy to have a alternate social, cultural network, which will have schools, which will have medical camps, which will have to counter them in the cultural sphere. So if we don't have all those things, only during elections saying some things will not work. So we are laboriously trying to build up alternate to RSS network. And that is, I think, is very important in the long run. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that they run a really fantastic film festival in Kolkata, the People's Film Festival, which has become a very popular movement in our country. And that is, I think, one of the few spaces where political films are screened. And I think that's a huge, huge, plus in their favor.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you.
You have any last comments?
No, I don't
okay,
have
so
any.
just on behalf of everybody.
I just want to thank Sunanda and Vikal Bangalore for hosting this and to have a nice and engaging conversation that we had. So thanks to all the audiences. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you, Dwaipayan. Thank you, Kasturi. Thank you, Rajshekhar, Sneha, and everybody at BIC. Fantastic.
Finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu. You can go for dinner. You can talk to him. Hello.